falls to me to recall some less happy days. I thought I might read from one of my columns in 1983, just to remind you all of some of the stupidities we had to put up with in this very long, arduous struggle. And to do that, I'm harking back to the case of Joe Borowski, a certifiable lunatic who ran a health store in Saskatchewan. Among the many vivid details I remember about Joe Borowski is he had weird health practices that sort of were about as smart as his views on abortion. He boasted of putting potatoes up his tush every night, some bizarre ritual of purification. This is the kind of guy who the courts allowed to come and make a case against the right to choose as representing all the fetuses of Canada. He was to be their spokesman in a court in Saskatchewan. Unbelievable as it may seem. And the courts ruled that women's groups would not be allowed to be present or to present a brief to the court in this case because they might be biased. Yes, it was 1983. And Norma Scarborough, dear Norma, we all remember and honor, a mainstay of Carol for so many years, went out to Saskatchewan to observe in the courtroom. And she told me, and I quoted her in my book, it was an appalling atmosphere. I had no idea how depressing it would be. I left in tears after listening to all these men, judge, lawyers, witnesses, jousting and game playing about the most personal things in a woman's life while we women sat by helplessly. And that's why I wrote in fury about Borowski. And I wanted to make people, I was struggling to make them understand how ludicrous it was that a bunch of elected Tory men and priests and assorted other non-females should be able to rule over our most intimate lives in this egregious manner. So I concocted a fantasy in my column asking people, and I'll read a bit from it, suppose this country had always been ruled exclusively by women. Women priests, MPs, judges, sports heroes, company presidents. Suppose the all-female parliament decided that male masturbation was a very great evil, and that all the wasted and lost sperm were real little potential human lives. Suppose it became a federal crime for a man to masturbate. If any man or boy wanted to waste his sperm, he would have to apply to an all-female hospital committee for a special license. It would debate his emotional and physical health in detail before ruling whether he had the right to take such a regrettable step, which might lead to bitter remorse in years to come. And then imagine a challenge in the courts. An extremist woman from the Eternal Multiplication Church might argue that even those few men with medical licenses to masturbate were murderers and should be stopped. Into the court would traipse the great women of the world. The female judge would brood over the evidence. Female lawyers would banter and joke about male sexual traits. A man would take the stand to sob about his past immorality and reckless waste of tiny lives. Every twitch of male habits, every gland, sac, and vascular cell would be scrutinized. And a famous woman specialist would be called to testify about the incredible beauty, the muscular vigor of the little sperm, alive and already imprinted with its human destiny, swimming with a grace equaled only by an Olympic champion. You have to admit the Star was a pretty decent employer. They let me get away with everything. And then a few years later, I was living in New York, and I got a phone call from the CBC saying the Morgentaler decision has come down, and I felt my heart leap. I wrote another column, which I won't read to you, but I will read one paragraph about some of what this meant to me and so many hundreds of thousands of women. More than any other single factor, the abortion laws have alienated me from and made me cynical about government. They were a constant reminder that the individual fate of women all over Canada, especially the poor, the distant, and the powerless, was a matter of total indifference to the men in Ottawa. Brutally and cravenly, they ignored the will of the majority of Canadian voters for decades. The agonies, the medical endangerment, the desperate straits, and the humiliations caused by the law, it all meant nothing to them. But nobody blamed them. Nobody called them to account for their dereliction. The man who took the punishment was instead the one man who had the courage to lead the battle against them. Henry Morgentaler is an important hero of mine. I know you all agree with me. Thank you.